Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is episode 12 of Deadlock and Load. My name is Cryptic here with my buddy Banana Sledgehammer. Happy New Year's, Brian.
Happy New Year's, man. Did you have a nice celebration?
Yeah, we actually did. We did something kind of low key. Went over to Suns fans' place, did a little game night with the
Nice.
group of friends, and just kind of hung out. It was nice. Yeah, we did it last year as well, and it's just like a good way to celebrate without going out and drinking, I suppose. That kind of gets old. So it was a nice chill evening.
Yeah, as we get old, that gets old. Yeah, I mean, I actually have a very similar group of like 8 of my friends and I had a miniature game night, little potluck thing. The fireworks in the Netherlands are nuts. Like everyone fires their own fireworks off for like an hour and a half, and it's like everywhere. Like if you just look around you, there's literally fireworks in every single direction. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. But yeah, very low key. I mean, I drank, but it was like 2 glasses of wine and a beer,
Yeah,
not some crazy shots or some shit. So yeah, I definitely agree that over time, spending it with the people you really care about and have fun. I think having fun and just appreciating and recollecting the year and stuff. I miss those game days that we used to have with
dude,
Suns
game
fan.
nights are fun.
Yeah,
The game
man,
nights are fun. We still do them. Yeah, next
definitely.
time you're in Phoenix, we'll plan one.
Will do. There's probably going to be some time in the next year or two that that's going to happen, so we'll keep an eye out.
Poggies?
Yeah,
Nice.
no spoilers. We'll figure. I'll give more details when there's actually stuff ironed out, rather than just making any empty promises right now. But
Right on.
yeah, so I mean, we talking about the New Year's. We're talking
Yep.
about how we celebrate it, and we both wanted this to be an episode about New Year's and the year to come in regards to Deadlock and what we hope for the game and what we hope to see from Valve and potentially, yeah, just everything surrounding the community with Deadlock. So I wanted to intro this a bit because I wanted to hear yours first. So what's like the first thing that
Ooh.
comes to mind for you uh, for New Year's or for the next year for Deadlock?
So I think this is. I wouldn't say it's going to be like the make or break year for Deadlock, but I think this is a very important year for Deadlock. Like there is a lot of games kind of just suddenly coming out of the woodworks that are going to be directly competing. Like the most recent one has been Marvel Rivals, obviously, and I think people are just enjoying that game because it's silly and fun and not super serious. And it's to me, it reminds me a lot of the Dota versus League of Legends comparison. So it's a little worrisome in my eyes, but I think the reason it's garnered so much attention, obviously, is just the fact that it's fully released, it's fully polished, mostly fully polished. Um, Whereas like Deadlock is still, there's still a long way to go with this game. So I think for me, it's an important year, and I think Deadlock has the potential to really uh kind of become its own like king of this genre, like in terms of like, oh, I don't know what you really call it because it's like a hero shooter MOBA, right? So it's not just a hero shooter. So it could definitely take over and do very well, and that's what I'm very excited for.
So my question is, I think maybe if I'm thinking it, maybe the viewers and listeners will be too, is that if you're saying that Marvel Rivals is very polished, I myself have barely watched it, not really played it, and yet, in comparison to Deadlock, and you're kind of hoping for that this year, what's like an example of something that Deadlock doesn't have, or you'd consider more polished about Marvel Rivals that may make or break Deadlock in the coming year?
I think part of it is just the animation, like the actual art of the game. When it comes to Marvel Rivals, it's simple, but it's done right, and that's a big part of the game. It feels and looks like everything in there is Marvel, and it has a theme, and it's very cohesive. Whereas like Deadlock's theme is there, right? We all kind of know when it takes place and where it takes place, but it doesn't it doesn't feel super immersive in a way, and I think that's something they definitely have been working on, and I would love them to keep working on as like a big priority this year, and that is going to be things like graphical updates to the map, continuing to expand on like all of the different themes of the lanes. I think that's a really big deal. Really polish out the buildings so they don't all look the same, and then of course the characters themselves. Like a lot of the character models are very basic and not really polished through. And I know that they've said that these are like still very temporary, like they're constantly updating the model. So I think for me personally, visual update might be like the number one thing I want them to work on this next year in terms of it getting the game to a state where it looks polished because it plays great. I think anyone who plays the game right now freaking loves the gameplay. Um, and it really just needs to look as good as it feels to play, I think, at this point.
Okay, so you're going for the looks as good as it feels. I definitely agree with you that the gameplay for this game is a reason why it shot up right when it came out of early access and or whatever, early beta or whatever, early alpha. And the issue for me is that whenever you're working on a project, you can only work on certain aspects of it at a time. And I feel like they've been heavily focused on the gameplay pretty much since it's come out. And it's like one of those things where we've always liked their gameplay changes. We think their balance updates are great. They always have like kind of listening to the community. We feel like they have a good sense of what's wrong with the game every patch. But for me, I'm thinking like, okay, so the player base has been ticking down throughout the end of 2024. So not only can you look to appeal to new people, but you can also, there's a lot of things that I think they could do to appeal to all the people that were already sold on the gameplay, right? And the fact is, if I'm already sold on the gameplay and I read a balance patch, that's not something that's going to break the tie, basically, of me playing some other game compared to Deadlock. But if I see 5-10 new heroes released at the same time, even if they're completely freaking broken, it's like, okay, suddenly I might come back and play. Or there's a huge battle pass that like for free for everybody that levels up and like has unlocks that are like really unique and cool and add flair to their favorite characters, and even like a skill tree that's purely cosmetic, nothing that actually changes the game. Something like this that gives like a progression feel to the game that isn't just MMR or rank. These are the type of things that I would really hope for 2025 that Valve shifts their focus to, because I've said it about Dota, I've said it about Deadlock 2. I think Valve knows how to make amazing games, but I really don't know if they know how to make like a sustainable ecosystem that keeps people coming back for the fuck of it. I actually have no better way to word it than the fuck of it. Like there are just fun things to do in the game. There's like a new thing to look at every week. So it's kind of in the same line as what you're saying. So I guess I'm more thinking about player experience rather than the actual gameplay itself surrounding the game. So like I know there'd be people out there that are upset. But I would be perfectly fine if they just didn't make a balance change for like 4 months and they just said, other than maybe like something minor that's completely busted or something, and just purely focus on pumping out every 2 week a new hero, or a fourth of the map is now looks different, something like what you mentioned. So that's really what I'm going for in 2025 as an overarching approach. But there's a lot of ways they could take that. It's not like I have a specific idea of exactly what I'm looking for, but it's more of a vibe check when it comes to the updates that they're releasing.
I like it. I like the idea of it being a vibe check. I think that's a very appropriate. I do agree though. I think for me, one of the main things that I think is holding Deadlock back from full release and from like people really jumping in is kind of the number of heroes in the game. I think obviously we know that there's a ton of heroes currently being worked on just in Hero Labs alone. There's several that are way more polished than others that are very close to being released. And I do think a priority needs to be put on just getting the heroes into the game. And the problem we have is like if a hero comes out and it's absurdly broken, like don't worry about doing a massive balance patch like you said. Just kind of retweak those heroes numbers the more and more that people play them, and get it to a spot where it's not like super overpowered like Shiv was when Shiv was released, right? Like just kind of tweak them and get them in a playable state, and then just jump into getting the next hero out as well. Like there needs to be a priority on the new hero, excuse me, the new heroes, and just fleshing out that roster, because I think that's a big part of getting heroes excited, or getting players excited, is having a lot of choices and making each of the heroes feel unique. And I feel like that's something that they've done really well so far. Is a lot of the heroes have an identity. There's a couple that don't, and we're kind of like a little unsure of what what kind of role they're supposed to fill. But a lot of the heroes do feel very unique in their playstyle, and I like that they keep that kind of like as a core philosophy to the game, rather than just being like, oh, it's another ADC, for the league players out there. It's another ranged carry that does the exact same thing, and I'm glad that they're not just kind of falling down that trap of every role feels the same to play. Like each of the tanks or initiators feel very different in this game, but fill similar roles, which I think is great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is something that literally just occurred to me from what you were talking about, but it was kind of in my mind every time every time when I was playing Deadlock like 40 games a week and I'd come back to a new patch, that I feel like they've been tweaking a lot of the identities of heroes. Like if I think of like Hayes when I initially started playing the game compared to now, when I think of Wraith when I initially started playing the game compared to now, it's like obviously most of their skill sets still the same, but like what makes them work? And it's like I asked myself, did Hayes really need to be changed from what she was 5 months ago? And the answer is I don't think what they did is wrong. Okay, that's like a big difference here. I don't think it's wrong, but obviously they paid a lot of attention to refining the identities of every hero that's currently in the game. And I'm thinking like the problem with that for me also was that I had to kind of relearn Hayes every time they did that. And relearn to itemize and all that kind of stuff. And I think if I do the same effort, if I'm Valve, if I do the same effort to just adding a new hero into the game, I still get to go play Hayes that I knew. Like I understood Hayes. I could go play her if I wanted to. I have the choice between that and a new hero. But instead, I'm now choosing to learn the new hero, not by choice, actually, but choosing that over some other hero that I played, if that makes sense. I feel like they spent a lot of time perfecting what they currently have. It's almost like perfectionism here, where it's like, yeah, there's something slightly off about Hayes. Let's fix her. When in reality, like, it's nice, it's great, but there's also only X amount of time and attention and resources that they can spend on the game. So, then that begs the question, is that the most optimal use of their resources to absolutely perfect everything that's currently in the game over adding stuff that people are excited about? Because yes, these heroes are in hero labs, right? But that also has to significantly limit how many people are trying them because they're not in regular games. And then it also, which means less sample size for them. And I'm just imagining, like, what if you stopped balance patches? What if you stopped tweaking heroes that are currently in the game, like whether or not identity or balance related, and just spent 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, purely hashing out a new hero? It's like you release the hero, and then the next 2 weeks, they're just focused on balancing that hero. You feel good about it after about 2-3 weeks, and then you release another one, and then you just do that for like 6 months. I'm telling you, people would be stoked about that. People would be like, if you're spending all of your resources, like, I hate to say it, if the game looks the exact same in 6 months with a new hero every 2 weeks, there's going to be so many people trying to play the game. And then once you're excited about the heroes, and then they're like, holy shit, now every area on the map looks so unique and cool and has all these unique flavors and aesthetics to it, then that's like an extra cherry on top. And then so you layer that on, and I guess I'm saying this with a lot of vim and vigor because I so much believe in the genius of Valve, but I've also become incredibly skeptical of their priorities when I see Dota combined with Deadlock. Not just because the games itself are fantastic. Like I say this, I'll say this a million times over. I love the games, but when I feel like you go a little bit too overboard on purely balance changes. That actually happened at one point in Dota, right? Where they just started releasing balance changes every 2 weeks. This was for like a year or something, like 5-6 years ago. It felt like everything else in the game just kind of died off at that point. And then I feel like the game never really came back from what was happening before that. So I guess with Deadlock, I'm hammering it home again, but I guess just spending more resources on adding new things rather than refining what's currently in the game, I think is my general really honing in on the vibe check I'm looking for.
Yeah, 100%. Like right now, I had to double check because I was like, I thought there's 22 heroes in the game
Yeah,
currently. With Hero Labs, there's 30. So
that's a big difference.
my yeah, it's a big difference. And my gut number, if someone was to ask me how many heroes do I think Deadlock needs to have
Good
on
question.
full release,
Yeah.
my number was 30, legitimately. I was like, I think 30 is enough heroes on full release to be like, this game has a fully fleshed out hero roster. They can add more over time. But that's a lot of different characters to play in a game like this. If you think back to like other hero shooters of the time, like you had maybe 12 to 16 like characters maybe that were even like viable at most. And so, like, having a roster of 30 heroes to play, and I think for MOBA players out there, they're like, oh, there's not, they're like 30, like we have 120. It's like, okay, it's very different from that, and we'll probably never get to those types of numbers in Deadlock, but I could very much see them getting up to like 50 to 60 heroes over the course of a couple of years in this game. But I think to start a 30 hero roster is super doable for them but like during this next year to get the game into full release. And I think I think you and I are kind of on the same page that like that is and should hopefully be the priority rather than balancing and stuff at the going into the year, because we've done a lot of balancing. And I think the game is still very fun in a good spot. And I think there's people who are going to moan and complain about little things here and there. But I think you're right when it comes to getting players back into it. You gotta put new heroes in the game. Absolutely.
Yeah, because with what they're doing with the game, like the closed alpha or whatever it was ended the what did they call it when they released it back in September or whatever, early August? They lifted the
They just lifted the embargo.
Okay, lifted the embargo. I was like, they lifted something. Okay, so they lifted the embargo. Since then, I think Mirage is the only new hero. Am I wrong? Shiv came out right before that, right?
Shiv was out, and then Mirage came out. I don't think anyone else did.
I don't think there's another single hero.
Because everyone thought it was going to be Holiday, and then Mirage came out, and they're like, "Who the fuck's Mirage?" Like,
yeah, and they have
like his hero kit was super unfinished. It didn't even have like 2 abilities on it, and then they're like, "By the way, he's actually just done."
Yeah.
So the thing that is interesting about that is the Hero Labs heroes could be more fleshed out behind the scenes than what we know. Like some of these heroes, especially things like Wrecker, who's just clockwork with some weird abilities, could be more complete. I think Raven is way more polished than we give him credit for. So same with Magician. A lot of them just need actual models, to be honest. Like I think they're pretty close to being done.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to put my head in, like, put myself in the mind of Valve and the devs and thinking, like, what would stop you from, even if the hero's 80% done, 70% done, wouldn't the hero get done much faster in terms of, other than design itself, in terms of gameplay and any balance or any ideas to the abilities, wouldn't it get done much faster if they just released it? Like, if you spent the next 2 weeks on it? Like, if you know what I mean, like if your full attention of the game is on that specific thing, I guess for me it's like, I guess there's no ballsiness to the updates. They're all very safe in regards to, okay, let's change the gameplay, let's or like balance the gameplay, let's adjust the heroes' identities, let's like refine what we currently have. Like, just throw a fucking wrench in there, man. Like, I would love to see it. Like, if they just dropped, like, one hero and then just said, yeah, okay, 2 weeks later, another one. And, yeah, there's going to be some chaotic shit where people hate the hero because it's broken and maybe there's some bugs and stuff. But I totally believe that that will get fixed like they did. Like, Shiv's no longer that way anymore. They already proved they can balance the game really well. None of this stuff... Like, if you have, like, this crazy mess of a situation, they've done it with Dota, where they just release this patch, and the whole game just looks unrecognizable because 4 things on the map changed, and so much new to consider and items and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think Deadlock needs that in regards to items and map play. I think it needs it in regards to just raw characters. I think 30 is a solid amount. I myself think the game would be full and done around 40, I think, just because I think around 40-ish you could start to have bans and have them be like randomly generated. So like, you know, that it solves the problem of heroes like Hayes with a 99%, you know, participation pick rate in games. And I think I just view a lot of these things as the problem with lack of hero diversity is the repetition of games. How often you're laning against, how often you're dying to, how often you're playing against these same heroes. And I also think the more heroes you add to the game, the more important it is that you just understand the hero you're playing. But right now, I feel like it's more about making sure you understand which counters what, because there's just only so many matchups in the game. And I think that it would just drastically shift the focus for me. And also, whenever new stuff comes out, everybody's learning at the same time, so everyone's equally bad, and that kind of adds a lot of I don't know, carefreeness, like lifts kind of the weight of feeling like you're supposed to do something right and try really hard. So it's kind of like adding a new season to like Path of Exile or something. It's like everyone's just starting fresh, but do it with hero pool instead. I mean, I feel like I'm making circles around the same point, but overall, I would say around 40. I think 30 would be good to release it, but be spending but still like working your way towards 40 early on in the time that you're actually released it. And you mentioned off podcast to me that you mentioned the full release potentially. Is that something you think could happen or want to happen during 2025, or what do you have like a general timeline expectation on that?
I think it will come out of closed access in 2025. Now, I think what it means, it will be moved into open beta. I don't think it will be, the full release during 2025. It depends on how much resources Valve wants to dedicate to it, but I feel like it will come out of closed access into open beta. It'll be on the Steam, store page where you can just anyone can go download it and play. And I think that unironically is a pretty big deal of making the game accessible, because you still have to get invited to this game. Am I wrong?
No, yeah,
did that change?
Yeah, it's still the
so
case.
I like that little barrier to entry legitimately
a lot.
stops a lot of people from playing the game, because people are lazy, man. You add one step as a deterrent from me doing something, and I'll be like, dang, you're right, I'm not gonna do it. It's pretty much it's kind of like this weird thing with humans. I don't know why, but I think it'll come out to open beta. Now, I don't think it will be fully released, but I could honestly see that end of quarter two, legitimately. I think the game could be out in open beta end of quarter two, if they are focusing on the hero releases like we're talking about. If what they do is focus on creating and getting the heroes into the game, doing visual updates, and not just the map. The other thing you mentioned at some point, it kind of made my brain trigger real quick. Items need to be recognizable, man. You need to be able to look at someone's inventory and be like, okay, this is what they have. It is so hard to look at someone's inventory and just keep the map, keep the button held down, move your mouse over everything.
Yeah.
The glance value is super hard. There are some things that are more recognizable than others, but items need to be way more recognizable in terms of what a hero has, because there's a lot of item slots in this game. It's not just 6. And in Dota, you could quickly glance at a hero's items, and it's you could take a quick snapshot with your brain in a half second and have an idea of what they have. But in Deadlock, it is all right, I'm going to spend a minute looking through this person's items, and there's 6 heroes on the enemy team. So that specifically is something that is a pretty big barrier to entry for newer players. And so I would hope that we see something along those lines as well.
Yeah, that is also, just in my opinion, implying another visual thing. That's just, it doesn't feel good. I agree. Even when I was even when I was comfortably spamming this game, like I said, 40 games a week, I still was not getting used to like checking people's items. It was difficult. So,
Yeah.
and that's coming from somebody who spent 10 years in a MOBA learning to check inventories and all that kind of stuff. Definitely very difficult to distinguish the items. And yeah, it just doesn't feel good to look at that. Yeah. And I think that the part that you mentioned about the barrier to entry, this is something I actually thought about with my phone a lot, maybe a few months back. And I listened to like a Dr. K podcast, and he talked about how like if you make it so like your Reddit is on like the 4th page of your phone rather than the front of your phone, you'll notice you just go on it 10 times less. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, because I have to consciously move over to it to go to it. And it's like, I feel like when the game is in the state that it's in, you have to like consciously make an effort to go Google searching and find a Reddit forum where somebody offers you an invite, or, you know, lo and behold, you have to
Go to
reach
a
out
random
to,
stream.
you have to go to a stream, you have to reach out to a friend on Steam and be a social person and like ask them for an invite or something. It's like, but what if it's on my Steam page and just says, hey, go try Deadlock now, and I click one button and suddenly I'm in? It's like, yeah, infinitely more people will try that, because there's just going to be one day where their attention span, they lose it for, you know, a minute, and they're in the game of Deadlock, or like they're loading into the game, or at least they're starting the download, as opposed to, yeah, having to really go out of your way to say, I love this game enough just by looking at it to make an effort. So I mean, it's definitely ease of access in anything in our lives. And the fact is, so much of human technology and everything has made so many things so convenient, so right at our fingertips, that when something is not, it simply makes a huge difference. And it's definitely psychological, but it's there, and it's been proven time and time again, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think we seem very much on the same page about Deadlock, about what we love about the game, but also what we really think the game needs to make a comeback. But also, because we don't, the base of the game, the gameplay itself, there's a reason so many people played it, and I definitely think everything we said is doable, and quite possible to have happen in this year. Maybe like not the full release, but lift the closed access, release 5 to 10 new heroes, make the map look much prettier, visuals on the items and the models. I think those are all. Did I miss anything about what we kind of recapped there for the year?
I would say they need to release 8 heroes.
8 heroes.
I think
Okay.
I think they need to get to 30, and I want them to get to 30 by like end of quarter 2. And
Okay.
I think it's reasonable, legitimately, as long as they're
A little more than one a month.
focusing. Yeah, it's like one every 3.5 weeks maybe, so it's doable. And a lot of these heroes are like pretty much done.
They're
Like
right
we
there.
could literally see Calico and Holiday in the game next week. Like it could very well happen. Like those heroes are pretty much done. They've done a really good job at balancing them. I know a lot of players. I specifically know several people in the Deadlock scene that are obsessed with each of these heroes, and they play them constantly. And they're some of the biggest testers for Valve when it comes to, you know, how they balance the heroes. But now put that on a scale of like, all right, thousands of people are playing these heroes instead of like a select, like, you know, a select
And also,
minority.
it's not just all specialists. See what happens to like 1,000 different people when they play it for the first time. That also has to be considered when you're like balancing designing a hero. So you don't want every hero to be the Dota Earth Spirit that gets balanced around like the 5 good Earth Spirits in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the longer you leave them in hero labs, the more that's going to happen, actually. So definitely think these polished heroes, the Calicos, the Holidays, just get them in there. Agreed with you. End of quarter 2 seems very realistic. Overall, I've had a very positive outlook in general for 2025. And I think we'll just have to wait and see. I think Valve will release show their priorities, demonstrate them over the course of the next few months, and we'll keep track with everything we have to say and comment on during this podcast and the future episodes. But to wrap up our episode, we usually do a what have we learned in the past week or two, but we figured we'd give some of our own New Year's resolutions. So, Ricky, what is one New Year's resolution for you?
So Non-deadlock related,
Yes, or it
of
could be.
course. So it could be, but this one's not. So my New Year's resolution this year is to work a Dota LAN. So to be hired as LAN talent for one of the tier one majors this year is my goal.
Yeah, I mean, you've been doing the remote broadcasting for almost every event. I feel like for what,
I
a year
worked
or two
20
now.
events last. I
Yeah,
worked 20 events this last year.
yeah. So that
So
I like that. That's a good goal. I mean,
it's I think it's reasonable. We'll see what happens, but yeah, that's like top of my list. I think in terms of career wise, something I would really like to be able to check off.
nice. Yeah, I think we're all hoping that you get that opportunity. I
Thanks, man.
Yeah, mine's a little bit less. I'll give my career focused one. So, for me, I really did re-envision the way I want to do content, whether it's Twitch streaming and YouTube, coaching and all that. And the end of the last year was pretty stressful for me in a lot of ways. So what happened was I feel like I'm kind of resetting the same process, but I've already done a lot of the work in the past. I just need to instill what I was already doing, but in a way that works better for me. So for me, I've always been the type to like go, head down, just get as much done as possible. But my goal in 2025 is to take a much slower, more methodical approach to adding things to my work schedule. So I basically tried my best to spend the last month of December just stripping my work schedule as much as I could to then rebuild it from the ground up with exactly what I want to include in it. So for me, I purposely started with like only 15 to 20 hours of work a week for this week specifically, and then I want it to be like 35, 40 by the end of maybe February. And then have the rest of the year be normal. But for me, I've never really been good at the slow, methodical approach stuff. So being a bit more disciplined, a bit more methodical and mindful about the way that I'm approaching my own work. I've always just been a content, I don't want to say dump because that sounds like I hate my own content, but I always just try to get as much out as possible at all times. And that's definitely not have been working for me in the last like year or two. So yeah, stuff like this though, really being conscious of the content that I'm putting out, that's my goal for 2025. And having a more refined idea of exactly what I'm trying to do. So similar idea in terms of both career focused, but mine's a bit more of a grind, I guess, while yours is more like yours is a payoff from the grind, I would say, because you've been going through that grind for a while, and I think as long as you just keep putting yourself out there, eventually the opportunity like that arises. So yeah, man.
This is year 9 of casting for me, so you would think we'd get there.
It's
I'm like the
lot.
premier remote caster at this point, so it's like I gotta get.
Well, that
gotta
means you're
get there.
basically like the backup quarterback right now, and you just need that opening. You just need that
I
opportunity.
just need someone to break their back, and
there
then
you
we're
go.
fine.
Yeah, maybe just.
So,
hey man, next time I'm at an event, I see Cap. Just let me know if you have like $100 or something, and
yeah. Yeah. We'll make it work.
I'm kidding.
Next Dream League, just take them out.
Yeah.
You know? Just take them all out.
If it actually happens, we're gonna delete this from YouTube and Spotify and all that.
We are not liable, dude. No way.
We're joking, guys. Seriously, nobody get any ideas at home. But yeah,
that's
guys.
the thing we love about the Dota scene, dude. The whole talent circle is so nice. Everyone's great. So
yeah, they really are. I mean, I think it's especially lucky because it's just like your family. You don't really get to choose your coworkers in this side of thing. Like you all chose to play Dota and you chose to be a part of that community, but I think it's very easy to get caught up in a situation where, like, if you're in a bad company and you don't like the work environment, you just leave. It's like, what if I didn't like the people who work in Dota? It's like, what do I do?
That would suck.
Yeah, so definitely very lucky and blessed. We all are very much surrounded by great people in the Dota community. Maybe not in our pubs, but within the casting scene.
Pick better people to play with, you know?
Exactly.
Just queue up with friends and have a good time. Just like we do in Deadlock. Queue up with friends, have a good time. That's it. New Year's resolutions for what we want and what we hope for Deadlock in 2025. Brian, it's been a fun episode, man. I really am excited and hopeful for this coming year, and I think a lot of people are as well when it comes to this game and Valve, you've cooked up something special. So thank you guys, and thank you all for tuning in. If you guys are watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and if you are listening on Spotify, thank you as well. And also consider subscribing to the podcast. We would very much appreciate it. But we will be back next week with episode 13 of Deadlock and Load. Where we're going to jump back into whatever Valve is doing this time. Hopefully a big patch. We'll see.
Yep, it was awesome. I enjoyed the episode. See you guys next time.
Bye-bye.